Keep calm. The Pittsburgh Steelers play a game that's on TV today. Later on tonight, the Pittsburgh Steelers will play week one of their preseason, kicking things off against the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia. It, of course, does not officially kick off the Steelers preseason as they had a game already, the Hall of Fame game, beating the Dallas Cowboys last week when I was in Canton. But this officially kicks off week one of the preseason overall in the NFL and a Thursday night game for the Steelers. So we are going to talk about what we expect to see in this game, some intriguing storylines. We talked about before how this offseason, this preseason kind of is more intriguing than normal. Mason Rudolph getting the start again. Thoughts on that and thoughts on what we want to see. I'm Mike Asti. He is Mike Vukovcan. Joining me just over the phone, though, while it's still on vacation, you're still going to see me. So we're still going to do this, but we're going to have a conversation nonetheless here on Mic'd Up. Mic'd Up is presented by Martin Lawn Services, and Doug Martin's number is 412-849-5894, and Mike can attest that proves I have memorized Doug's number because I can't see that background number behind Mike normally that we have in the visual. So, Mike, to get us started here, this is now another preseason game for the Steelers. Mike Tomlin kind of has alluded to. They were honored to be in the Hall of Fame game. Normally, you're just kind of saying that, and you're going to say that, but you don't want to play tons of preseason games. Fans certainly don't want to watch them. I think he really does like this now because he has another one to evaluate this talent. But what are you looking for in this game? And we're going to get to the quarterback battle, but what are you looking for in this game in particular? Is it different than the first preseason game? Is it the same? Do you want to see more of something here? Now they're going to play again. You can only get so much from practice.
Yeah, before I get to that, I'm just a little surprised that I don't know if surprised, but the fact that Roethlisberger isn't played. You and I touched upon in one of the previous shows how we thought it might be important for him maybe to play a couple quarters because of
be nice.
Yeah, because of the new offense, the new players, just to get. But obviously, Mike Tomlin doesn't agree with that. The fact that we're into the second. Yeah, we're into the second game now, and he is not going to play today.
Right.
I don't know how I feel. I probably, considering I said that I didn't think it would be a bad idea for him to go into halftime of one of these first couple games. I obviously don't agree with that, but
sure,
I understand maybe as far as the injury factor. There are certain guys that I definitely wouldn't play. Cam Hayward would be one of them. Guys like Tuitt,
right.
Patrick, guys that know what they're doing out there. And but as far as what I'm looking for, I want to see if this team's able to run the ball again. I want to watch the offensive line. I know it's boring.
Yeah.
And, but I think it's key. Even when you get into the second team, I think it's important because we don't know if some of those guys on the second team could eventually be moving into the first team slot. So I don't think anything's guaranteed. So I want to see how they're able to move the ball on the ground. The only thing is, from all the reports at practice this week, there were so many guys banged up at running back, missing practice. I'm not sure, who's all going to be running. And so that'll be interesting. But one thing I definitely I didn't completely agree with was how long Najee Harris was in there in the first game. I think that was a little bit too long for him with some of the guys he was playing behind. So I like to see that cut down a little bit.
I think that's kind of a consensus that you like to see Najee a little bit because, of course, a game is different than practice. The NFL taste in a game is different than practice, but he did play a while, so maybe not nearly as much, or maybe you'll be done with him because it clearly shows that he is able to do this thing in the National Football League, and the offensive line is really what to watch for. Zach Banner, etc., they're still hurt. They're still barely practicing. The offensive line looked average. It was interesting, Mike, on our postgame show, Nick Fairbar of Steelers Now, he actually said that he thought the offensive line looked slightly above average, and I said to him, well, yeah, that was his positive of the game. And I said, well, isn't that an indictment in your concern of the overall line, that if you're saying it looks slightly above average and that's your big positive, that's really a concern. So, yeah, they were okay maybe in that game, certainly not lighting the world on fire, but that's potentially a concern that if that is a positive for you than what they could be the rest of the year. So needing to see more from them, needing to see them be a cohesive unit overall, and needing to see others in that offensive line play well together, because you don't know how much you're going to get from the normal starters since we have not seen them. And someone like Banner, we've not seen since week 1 of the regular season last year. So it's been a while. Could be good, won the battle last year. We don't know. Anthony McFarland, though, is the running back that I would really like to see, because there's been a lot in camp of his burst and his ability to be maybe more than just a complementary piece. He maybe could take a lot of carries away from Najee so that he's not banged up. We've talked about before that maybe Harris would see closer to 390 in carries instead of 440, because you could give some to McFarland, who maybe could also even be a pass catcher for you as well to make the offense really explosive. But he's been banged up, so we've not been able to see as much from him in the last couple of weeks. Seeing him in game action would really, really be nice. Again, Mike and I previewing Steelers-Eagles in Philly here for week 1 of the NFL preseason, the Steelers' second preseason game. Looking to go 2-0 in the preseason, not that that matters. Now, Mike, what we got to get to, which is the conversation we just touched on, and you just touched on Ben. Now, I agree with you. I'd like to see Ben in some of these preseason games, and more than normal, where he just gets mop-up duty in the 4th or the 5th now preseason game. But that's what's going to happen. Ben has barely practiced. Ben has not really shown us what he knows from this offensive this offensive system, even though it is very new, and him learning Matt Canada's offensive system is very different than what he's used to. But it doesn't appear that he's going to play that much in preseason. It does not appear that anything's going to be different than how he's normally handled. So that could be a concern moving forward. And I'm not surprised by that. I'm sure he doesn't want to play preseason games, and you don't want to get him hurt. But would not be a bad idea, because it is such a new system, to see him have some time. But separate from Ben, Mason Rudolph getting the start now again. Dwayne Haskins going to get time. Dobbs going to get time. Dobbs doesn't matter, even though he played well in the first preseason game. Haskins and Rudolph, they both looked average. I think Rudolph played little better, but it doesn't matter. They both looked average. Neither one of them grabbed the bull by the horns in that game. Would you have liked to seen Haskins start this game if it's a true competition rather than Rudolph again? And how much time do you want to see from those two?
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Mike, in that there's the talk during the game and throughout the week about this backup quarterback position is just it's insane as far as how people are focusing. It's just impossible. First of all, it's impossible. I should say it's worthless to try to really evaluate when you're going against a defense that wasn't running anything. Number one. Number two, you have to consider, unless you're just a fanboy for a certain player,
right?
You got to look at who he was playing with.
Right.
The fact that Mason Rudolph was, had the mains. Sure. Obviously, he should probably do a little bit better than Haskins.
What he did. Yeah, I mean, he had the big pass play, the big 45-yarder to Claypool. He missed James Washington, which then sent that into be a whole drama. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point on your part. If this is a true competition, next game, I'd like to see Dwayne Haskins start.
Yeah.
If Ben's not going to play, but I would assume Ben's going to get some sort of action in the third game. But who knows?
Well, they have 5, so maybe Ben would get action in the fourth game.
Yeah, whatever. If that's the case, then I want to see Dwayne Haskins play, because I don't know how this thing's going to play out. I think Dobbs is one of those sneaky guys that a coach can just feel comfortable with having on the roster, knowing that he's not going to do anything great, but he's also not going to kill you. He brings you the mobility factor. Obviously, he's smart. I think people act as though they know how this whole thing's going to play out. I don't think anybody knows, really.
No, nobody knows. Nobody knows absolutely at all. All the way down from fanboy to the most credentialed and tenured media member around, say Ed Bouchette. Nobody knows for sure, because I don't think the Steelers know for sure. That's why nobody knows for sure. And I do think, honestly, maybe this is not as much of a competition to the Steelers as we all think it should be. Again, Dwayne Haskins has the talent edge, certainly has the talent edge. He's a former first-round pick for a reason. Mason Rudolph might have a ceiling, even though he's been okay and maybe provides you a serviceable backup. But the Steelers are sending all kinds of messages that Mason Rudolph has a clear edge here. He's starting again. He's the one we're talking to. After the game on Thursday, Mike, we got Tomlin and we got Rudolph. We asked to speak to several others. We didn't get any others. And Rudolph was speaking like he already knew he was going to start. Tomlin was talking like this isn't even a conversation. Of course, Rudolph would start the next game, and he is. Now, I think for it to truly be a fair competition, Dwayne Haskins is going to have to start the third preseason game. I'll tell you right now, if Dwayne Haskins is not starting the third preseason game, I think the Steelers have decided Mason's the number 2. And that's crazy at this point. But I think for it to be fair, you'd have to give Haskins a preseason start. And once you get to 4th and 5th preseason games, that really is to fine-tune the first string offense, hoping guys are healthier. Ben got to see some time, as we're bringing up here. So the third preseason game is that sweet spot. You do have 5 this year. It got to be Haskins there to make it a fair competition. I probably would have started him here in this game, honestly. I still would have gave Mason some reps, but I would switch it. And then Mason maybe could have started in the third preseason game if you want to switch it. But now you can't do that. Now that has to be Haskins. And Mason, it's about playing with the top receivers, the top running backs, the top line, the top weapons. However, it's also, I want to see Haskins play against the top defense of the opponent. Now, the only edge I give to Rudolph from the first preseason game, they both were basically the same. Rudolph had the big pass play to Claypool, but of course Haskins didn't have Claypool in there. But Rudolph also was playing against the better defensive players, the more of the first team for the Cowboys, whatever you think of them. Whereas Haskins was getting mostly mop-up duty and mostly the second half, late first half, early second half in the third quarter. I got to see what he can do against guys who are going to start in the National Football League, not guys who are going to be bench players, guys who are going to start in the NFL, whether it's a good or a bad defense. So to know that, you want him to have the weapons and play against the first defense. That got to be him starting at some point. But
the other thing, Mike, though, is maybe the Steelers looking at this as a completely through different glasses than we are, in that maybe they're already set on, all right, Mason Rudolph's going to be our backup this year because we know what he is and what he's about.
Win now mode, right?
Dwayne Haskins could be viewed by the Steelers as just like a piece of clay, and they're trying to figure out, and they're trying to mold him for 2022, and they have no intention of him being anything in 2021 aside from a guy that's going to be a sponge, that's going to try to learn everything. And they're also going to evaluate him is to see, within a year, how he acts, how he a Pittsburgh Steeler on and off the field. And then they can make their evaluation next year. And then it could be a true competition between Haskins, maybe, and Rudolph. Maybe they have no plan for him to be a backup this year. And it's just going to be, they know going in that our quarterback room is going to be Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph, Dwayne Haskins, and that's the way it's going to go. Maybe, there is maybe no competition in the eyes of Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And by the way, to correct, there's 4 total preseason games, but 5 weeks of it. So that's the difference there. And again, I think that's even more reason why Haskins has to start the third game. But maybe it is exactly what you're saying. Maybe it is exactly what you're saying, that maybe Haskins can still be part of that future. Maybe they still certainly like him. Again, as we touched on, it's low risk, high reward. So it's not like they're risking much money. You certainly could still see him as a piece for the future. But it might be that they've decided, because they are win now mode and Ben is back, that look, we don't have time to mess around with Haskins necessarily being the QB2 this year. He's so young, he could still be that QB3. Now, probably if what you're saying and what I'm saying is occurring, then Josh Dobbs is playing for no reason, because probably then he's going to be off the roster again. Although Tomlin did brag on him after the first preseason game against the Cowboys and say he looks really good. He was never anything you guys talked about before. He's lost other QB battles. He ends up finding his way back here. I called him kind of the Steelers quarterback cockroach, and not in an insulting way, meaning he just always finds his way back. back and is always around. And he did look really good, but he was playing against the weakest defensive unit out of any of the three because it was the last guy out there. So that is an advantage for him. We'll see what happens. I don't think he has any chance of being more than quarterback 3, likely off the roster, possibly if you're looking at keeping both Rudolph and Haskins. But it doesn't look like Rudolph's going to be traded unless they're trying to showcase Rudolph and then trade him. That's why they need him to have another start. Who knows?
Or they could do what they did with Haskins. Who knows in the NFL with quarterbacks dropping,
right.
If they drop throughout the preseason, and the MO on Dobbs is that he's a good team guy. He's smart as hell, and can be serviceable. Maybe they did a couple years ago. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but who knows? Maybe they could find a team that's desperate enough, like Jacksonville was a couple years ago, and maybe they can pick up a 6th or 7th round pick for Dobbs later on in the year. Let him play enough, let him showcase himself enough, and we get to the 3rd or 4th game, and somebody drops. Teams around the NFL don't value 6th and 7th round picks as very much. So who knows what can happen.
Yeah, who knows? And honestly, they did it before, as you brought up. They did it before, trading him to Jacksonville, then welcoming him back. And I've always said this about Dobbs. I think this is really, really screamingly clear, Mike. You mentioned how smart the man is. He's literally a rocket scientist. Number one, I think the world probably could use him not holding a clipboard. Is great for the Steelers, but I think he could do a lot of greater things outside of football. And number two, I think at some point he's going to be an assistant coach in this league, at some point going to be a quarterback's coach in this league, and at some point the Steelers are probably going to be welcoming him back as an assistant coach or quarterback's coach. Clearly, the Steelers love him. He is incredibly smart. I'm not trying to get anyone fired, but that got to be it. So I would say within the next decade, that's likely happening, or his future, or probably where he'd be better suited to have that occur because he would have the on the field, the off the field. The man could probably create a whole new offense playing a video game that no one's even aware of now. He's ridiculously smart. I'd love if we could talk to him more, but that's not the case because, again, it's probably QB3 at the ceiling. Now, outside of this offense and outside of the quarterback battle, which everyone's always going to focus on, even though we have no idea what's going on, and maybe it's already been decided. Maybe they're just showcasing guys to trade. Maybe Mason's going to be here no matter what anybody wants or anybody likes or anybody brings up. And I've kind of always said the Steelers like him more than fans do. Maybe that's actually true. Anything you need to see on the defensive side of the football, because the defense only held the Cowboys to 3 points. The defense was Ben Badome Brank and played well against the Cowboys, but it is Blaine Gabbert. It is the Cowboys. Their offense was certainly not clicking on all cylinders. They weren't able to complete a pass, really. You didn't have Dak Prescott out there. We'll see what happens against the Eagles, but this defense has been kind of criticized in camp and then played well in the first preseason game. So do you need to see more of that from them and maybe against a better offensive team?
Yeah, I want to see some of these cornerbacks. If you are going to pick one weakness on the Steelers this season, it's no doubt, the secondary. Once you get beyond Joe Hayden and Sutton and those guys back there, is Justin Lane somebody that can be counted on to start a game if need be, or some of the other guys that are in the mix to get playing time back there, because that's injuries are going to happen. And does Mike Tomlin have guys back there that are going to be able to step in and get the job in a pass friendly or in a pass happy NFL? We know it's going to happen. Who does he have back there? And they picked up Lafayette Pitts this week from formerly of Buffalo. Pitt. Right. He's going to get his first action this week.
Right.
And some of the inside linebackers that's been talked about as far as it's been a pleasant surprise. Buddy Johnson.
He's looked good. He looked good in the game against Dallas. Yeah.
Yeah. He's opened some eyes so far. So, I'm going to be more interested actually when, we start getting into the second and third quarter. Normally by then I'm flipping channels, but like I said, for some reason I'm actually into the Steelers preseason this year, and I want to see some of these younger guys, some of these draft picks, defensive end out of Miami.
Yeah.
Had a sack last week. Apparently he's opened some eyes as well. So I want to see. It should be interesting though, and one thing as I said at the beginning, in no way would I be risking playing any of these starters, Devin Bush, Cam Hayward, Stephon Tuitt, any of those guys. They're sitting until next week. There's no value of them getting 2 or 3 rotations out there. Just doesn't have a point.
Oh, yeah. And Laudermilk is somebody that's been getting a lot of praise in camp to this point. But yeah, Buddy Johnson's looked good. I'd like to see him build on that. And Justin Lane needs to look better. He did not look good against Dallas, so he needs to look better. That was somebody that most were pretty critical of. Again, he's going to be more relied on than maybe even would have been last year. Joe Hayden contract situation, him being a veteran, him getting hurt a lot. He's going to be relied on too, but Justin Lane, we need to actually see that in games. He's not really had to have that moment yet, and certainly didn't play well against Dallas.
One thing I can see, Mike, is the Steelers have some cap room, unlike many other years. So it's kind of odd that they actually have some money to play with. It wouldn't surprise me at all if through these evaluations, through these games, if they determine that we just don't have enough veteran presence back there, veteran talent. Wouldn't surprise me at all if once we start getting it down in the cut down date, that some of these teams that maybe cut a veteran defensive back, somebody that maybe still has some talent, but maybe team is just going to go with the youth or something like that. Wouldn't surprise me at all if later on towards the end of the preseason, we see Kevin Colbert and Tomlin decide to go out there and take a flyer if they determine that, somebody like Justin Lane or whoever isn't, cutting, isn't making enough plays and could be a liability back there instead of somebody that could actually help.
Yeah, certainly there are question marks around the Steelers roster and who's going to be in the Steelers roster and how it's going to look in terms of the starters all the way down going into the regular season. I mean, if the quarterback backup situation is not even finalized at this point, a lot of unknowns. Obviously, it screams the offensive line. That's really the thing that everyone's going to watch for. The offensive line is never going to be crucified as much as this year. It's really weird. Most teams fans probably don't know who are on their offensive line, but Steelers fans could analyze that offensive line up and down because it is going to be such a big deal. And if the offensive line does not click, almost nothing else matters. Obviously, it doesn't affect the defensive side of the ball, but it may with how long they're on the field, etc. The whole team wouldn't be able to go anywhere unless that offensive line can't produce. So that is the main thing for sure.
I'll say one thing about the offensive line.
As we wrap things up, go ahead.
Yeah, is that it at least has potential. At least they're not going in there with some veterans that have some has-beens. They have guys that they've drafted in the last couple of years. Right. They're going to have probably 3 guys that they've drafted in the last 2 draft classes with a chance to start. That's what you want to see. And I don't be surprised if Najee Harris, a good running back that's able to make people miss, helps out an offensive line as far as making them look a little bit better.
I'm sure he will. Yes.
Yeah. We're not talking about Jalen Samuels or Benny Snell here. You got a guy that's able to make the defenders miss. And I think Najee Harris could cover up some of the offensive line's warts.
Well, that's what he said. He literally said, I was there in person. He said it to my face and to others in media that he does not hold anything against the offensive line. He expects himself to step up and do what you're saying. And he takes it on his responsibility to make any offensive line better, or that if they miss a block, to make something happen anyway. So he has the mentality of an elite running back. He said, this is good on good. This is the National Football League. He goes into games figuring they are going to miss blocks. And he is not criticizing the O-line. He said he would go into games thinking that Hall of Famers would miss blocks because no one's 100%. And when they miss, he's not just going to quit on the play. He is still going to try to make something happen. So that's what you do want to hear from a running back. That is how you have a star. And while everyone, including myself, was critical of the draft pick, saying you had to pick up the offensive lineman first and get maybe a running back that wasn't as great as Najee, he certainly could be offensive rookie of the year. He certainly could quiet people if he's able to step up and make the O-line better. You just hope it doesn't kill him and make it a 4-year career because he's having to do that constantly, and this is a bad O-line. But that's his mentality right now for going into next year. It certainly could pick up the O-line, and he's the best guy you could have out there to have a young offensive line. And I do think a guy like Zach Banner is a major question mark, but could be in a good way because it's an unknown. We only saw the one game last year, but people forget he won the battle fair and square in camp last year. That must mean Tomlin thinks something of him, and all we've seen since is him be hurt. But maybe when healthy, maybe when he gets back in there, he certainly could be a stud. You don't know. He won it. When you win a job in an NFL camp, Mike, especially with a Hall of Fame coach giving you the job, you did something. You're not winning jobs for any charity or because anyone's friends. He won a job fair and square in an NFL camp, which means there's something there. If he can be healthy on the field, we'll see what it is. We literally don't know. There's no real way to be fairly criticizing him too much on the field. We saw 1 quarter of football on Monday night to open up the season last year. So we got to do a wait and see, unfortunately, with his offensive line, but we'll see how long they can play together because that's going to be the problem. Him and others, Trixacor, they not able to give too much time together because they have all been banged up. That'll do it for this show. And of course, the Steelers will play a game tonight, another Thursday night game in their preseason. This is officially week 1 of the NFL's preseason, the Steelers' second preseason game. Keep it over to Steelers Now for all of our coverage. Also keep it here to Pittsburgh Sports Live after the game, as I will have another post-game show. Hit that subscribe button. You'll get a notification whenever that show goes live, and anything else we're doing here on Pittsburgh Sports Live, because we have videos of Pitt Camp, WVU Camp, what's going over there at Penn State, also Steelers training camp, of course, some player interviews occasionally as well, and everything else going on the channel. I have a show actually that'll drop today where I will drop the mic. Finally, we can maybe quiet that debate on Antonio Brown versus Hines Ward and to compare their Hall of Fame candidacies. And why that shouldn't be a debate or really shouldn't be a controversy with the opinion that should be universal, but seemingly is not for Steeler fans. That's Mike Vukovcan. I'm Mike Asti. That'll do it for Mic'd Up here, presented by Martin Lawn Services. And you can contact Doug Martin at 412-849-5894. The Steelers play a game. So that's something to be positive. Let's quit debating and just enjoy the Steelers are actually going to play a football game here today.